Welcome to the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation and Municipality of Central Elgin. It is Monday, September 9th. We welcome those here in the council chambers, as well as those who are joining us virtually. For those in the room, if you could please stand for the national anthem. The Municipality of Central Elgin acknowledges that it is located on the land of the McKee Treaty that was signed by the Wyandot and Anishinaabe nations, including ancestors of Chippewas of the Thames First Nation. It is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandaronk, and Mississauga Nation. These First Nations continue to provide ongoing stewardship to the land and waters in the Municipality of Central Elgin. Council, any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes, if I could get a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Griffin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that the minutes for the regular meeting of council dated July 29th, 2024, and special meeting of council dated August 12th, 2024 be adopted.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. We have a delegation this evening. I'd like to welcome Mr. Rob Foster, our accountant from Graham Scott Enns, who will present the municipality's 2023 audit report. Welcome, Mr. Foster.
Thank you very much. I see as consistent with other years, I draw the big crowd to these meetings, so you're welcome. We could move to our page 2, which is our auditor's report. So this is our stamp on your financial statements. And this is what you'd be looking for as a clean audit opinion, which is what's being presented here. So we do believe it presents fairly in all material specs the financial position of the municipality as at December 31st, 2023. Keeping in mind, these are consolidated financial statements, so they do include a proportionate share of the water boards included in these numbers. If we go to our page 4, which is our statement of financial position. So these are the numbers for 2023 with comparables for 2022. I'll hit a few highlights. I think one thing you'll notice, which is consistent across all the municipalities that we've been preparing for Elgin this year, is our taxes receivable. The current portion is up a little bit over previous years, which I think is consistent with the economy that's going on in these current times. You will note that there will be a change this year in the financial statements in that we're recognizing investments at their fair market value now as opposed to their cost. So there's an actual extra page in the financial statements outlining the change in that unrealized gains or losses on those investments. Excuse me. So we have total financial assets of just under 31 million. Our deferred revenues, the obligatory reserves, long-term debt, so no new debt taken on in the year. So if we look at our net financial debt, so we are still in a net debt position, which is not really what we want at the end of the day, but we did make some progress coming from 10 million down to 1 million. We had approximately $2.9 million in additions to tangible capital assets and a little over 7 million in amortization claimed in the year. So we have a total surplus then of before gains and losses of 156 million. Again, keeping in mind that that surplus is 157 million of that is invested in tangible capital assets. It's not a current surplus that you could use for spending purposes. Our next page is our statement of operations and accumulated surplus. So again, keeping in mind that you do prepare a zero balanced budget, but for PSAB purposes, we do eliminate any transfer from reserves as revenues. We do add in amortization expense, which is why you're seeing a budgeted surplus on the budget side of things. Again, that's a PSAB based surplus. Overall, we did have a surplus as well for regular purposes in the year, where our assessment base was up a bit from what had been budgeted for. So we're seeing some positive tax collection dollars there compared to budget, as well as our investments were up almost not quite $1 million above what we had budgeted for. And we did have capital donations. So again, in a PSAB format, the capital fund is brought into the one column. So any revenues related to capital have been included in these numbers. We'll also note that there was a little over 2 million, the last of the dollars for the harbor fund included in funding. And it's also on the expense side under transportation, as you see why there's now a fairly significant difference there between the 8.8 and the 11 on the expense side for transportation that is related to the harbor fund. So overall, annual surplus for PSAB purposes of 5.3 million. Our next page is our transition in that net financial debt, starting with the surplus, subtracting off any investment in tangible capital assets, adding back amortization, any gains and losses, bringing us to that 1.1 million. Our next page is the new page, which is the statement of remeasurements. So we started off in our investments at just under a $600,000 loss. We did have a $700,000 of unrealized gains in the year, giving us at the end a $70,000 of unrealized gains in your investments. Our next page is a statement of cash flows. Again, this is now taking you from an accrual to a cash basis, just going through the various parts of the working capital, investments, capital fund, and financing activities. We now get into the notes to the financial statements. And that note 1 does go through the various changes in the handbook for the year, including our financial instruments, which is the gains and realized statement, as well as any retirement asset obligations that may exist on property that's owned. I think we can move right along. Most of the other notes are unchanged from the previous year. We can move along all the way to our note 16, or page 16, sorry, note 3. So that is your investments, and also showing that the harbor funds have been fully utilized in 2023. Our next page, including notes 4, 5, 6, 7, that does give you the breakdown. Those are both taxes receivable and accounts receivable. If we move to our note 12, page 20. So this is an outlining of all the municipal debt and its related interest rates. Obviously we can see you have some very competitive interest rates in today's market. So that's very positive for the overall for the municipality. And then our next page, page 21, it does break down where those debts are to be recovered from. So development charges, the bulk of that would be related to the fire station. The tax component would be the east side road component, and the remaining user charges would be water and sewer. The next page is our detailed continuity of the tangible capital assets, opening balances, additions, disposals in the year. And the next page is just for the previous year, the exact same thing. We'll focus for a minute on our page 24, note 14. So this is what makes up that accumulated surplus of 156 million. So your general surplus really relates to actually to the water boards, because council did approve the transfer of their surplus into reserves for last year. It also gives us a breakdown of the reserves and reserve funds, and then changes year over year there. I think those are the main highlights I wanted to go through in the financial statements. I will be happy to take any questions specifically related to these, and then we'll go over some of the other letters that I've provided as well.
Thank you, sir. Council, any questions so far? All good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So we have also provided our standard audit findings letter. So the stamp we do, the auditor's report is on the financial component statements of the municipality. The audit finding letter is more controls, management, that sort of thing. So for the most part, we didn't have any issues with required journal entries, any of that sort of thing. Management was very cooperative. But under our other matters, we did note that we feel the municipality should focus on trying to get the software in place to better manage their tangible capital assets on a more detailed level. Currently, they're much more on a higher level. And I just think with the province's focus on tangible capital assets, we're going to see them looking for reports and that sort of thing that may be tied to funding, and you may not be able to give the detail that they're looking for. So I think that's something we would like to see occur hopefully by the end of 2025 to have that software in place. We've also provided our audit findings and audit engagement letter. Those are just standard to the practice of audits. So I'd also be happy to take any questions on the audit findings letter.
Thank you, Robin. Questions from council? I think that might be it, sir.
Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully that meant that I did a good job. Either that or you're completely lost and you'll call me later. So.
Well, we know where you work and you're very close by, but again, I think it was very thorough and I appreciate that. And we appreciate you coming and spending some time with us.
Very welcome. Thank you very much.
Take care. Sorry. Councillor Watson, please.
Through you, Mayor, to Rob or Mr. Foster. This municipality, we've had a 0% budget for the last couple of years. Could you just give us a report card? How you're a constituent of this municipality as well. How do you think we're doing?
Sir.
Well, I guess I've been doing municipal audits since 1995, actually. So it's been a number of years. And I have seen lots of different approaches by council to raising and lowering taxes. I guess I'll say a 0% increase in inflationary times can be troubling in the long term. One of the things that I remember, there was a municipality that made an error in their calculation of their taxes. So they did a budget for X number of dollars. When they actually did the numbers, it turned out that it calculated a smaller number. So they didn't raise taxes to what they had budgeted for. And year after year, because that error remained in the tax rates, cumulatively, it had a very negative impact on the municipality. So you have to be very careful, I guess, in looking at if expenditures continue to grow, and we try to continue to find as much as we can in surplus or additional dollars. I mean, eventually you will find that can have a negative impact. Has it at this point? I would say in the short term, you haven't seen a negative impact from a zero budget. But I do have concerns that that was a 4-year plan, that might cause us long-term problems as a constituent. You know, I like to see, I mean, I'm a saver, I'm an accountant, right? I like to see money set aside in reserves as much as we can for future capital asset projects especially. And so, you know, would you rather pay a couple extra bucks each year and then a whole bunch all at once? Again, that's personal, how I feel from how I run my life, but I will go back to that experience with a municipality that made an error, which would be, you could make it comparable to a zero budget in an inflationary time. It did have a longer term negative impact on them.
Thanks, Mr. Foster. And on that, when I was discussing this with Mr. Aristone, who's obviously well respected in the field, you know, we find ourselves in a situation where we have $10 million in the bank. The interest on which this year will provide the equivalent of a 3% tax increase at approximately $540,000. So although I agree that when we look at things in the long term, we have to balance the costs of running the government versus what might be some infrastructure and other costs down the road, I think that it would be fair to say that it's reasonably pragmatic to give the ratepayer of Central Elgin somewhat of a bonus from the work this council's done. But I appreciate your continued diligence as you give us your fair and honest opinion. So thank you for that.
Again, I'm an accountant, I'm a conservative guy, so.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Actually, while Mr. Foster's here, we have, can I get a mover and a seconder that staff report DFS 1824 be brought forward at this time? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Watson, thank you both.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that the 2023 consolidated financial statements for the Municipality of Central Elgin be approved, and that the mayor be authorized to sign the 2023 engagement letter, audit planning letter, and audit findings letter on behalf of the municipality.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thanks again, Mr. Foster. Moving on to correspondence requiring action. We have two, one from the St. Thomas Cemetery, a letter from the former Deputy Mayor, Mr. Marks, Chair of the Cemetery Board. Questions or comments? Councillor Griffin, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. So my question. Oh, would you like us to do?
Sorry,
It's
I was,
quite appropriate.
okay. Thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder. I'm going to need a seconder for this. I jumped ahead there. So Councillor Griffin is going to move. Councillor Watson will second. Thank you both for discussion. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Griffin.
No, thank you very much for that. So my question here is around the outcome if the cemetery does not receive the money that it's requesting. They do say here that they need this to maintain the grounds and that they would potentially have to, they describe it as abandoning and transferring to the municipality, which I've heard that cemeteries can do, but I would like to understand what the outcome there is for us. What happens to people who have paid for plots there that have not yet been used, or what does that mean for us in terms of the responsibilities that we adopt and the outcomes ultimately for the community?
Thank you, Councillor. Who wants to go forward on this? We have our committee member. We also have our CAO. Did you want to draw straws? Deputy Mayor, please.
There's been quite a bit of delegation done on this one, and this has been something that's been threatened quite a few times, that if the cemetery doesn't have more money, it will dissolve it and turn it over to the municipality. And I don't think that that gives us reason to continue to give into giving them money. We've given them money. We gave them money in 2017, and St. Thomas continues to give them money. But I don't think that makes sense going forward. We have had a bunch of cemeteries that have been turned over to the municipality at this point that we do maintain, and the costs that's incurred on that cemetery, honestly, it could probably be covered closely to the 30,000 that they're asking for. So it doesn't make sense to continue to be threatened to have to give them money to maintain it.
Follow up from Councillor Griffin, please.
Thank you. Through you, yes. I do agree that it's important that we not just capitulate on anything anytime that we receive something that we feel is a threat. I do agree that if we don't have the right information, we can't just always throw money at a problem. But what I would like to understand here is how many graves are actively open and paid for and waiting to be used. And from there, what is the outcome for the people who have paid for those spaces? Do we then provide that service for them? Or is this something where we look to compensate them for?
Thank you. And just before Ms. Hurd, if I could, the amount that you mentioned from 2017 was a loan. And I'm told that it was how much? So $50,000, 35 of it has been paid off. So there's $15,000 owing on that. If you could just comment on that, because I didn't know that information until recently. Thank you.
So through yourself, sorry, through you, you're correct. We did, Central Elgin provided the board a loan in 2017, and I checked with our treasurer today, and the 2024 amount has not been paid. So the actual loan outstanding is 20,000.
Thank you. And you were also going to, I think, follow up from Councillor Griffin's question. Thank you.
So through you to Councillor Griffin. So a couple of things. Firstly, I do understand that St. Thomas did provide the board $20,000. Is that, if I can just confirm? So since the writing of this letter, that is my understanding. The other piece, I think it's really important for council to understand that this is a completely independent board. So it is not affiliated with a church. It's not affiliated with a different group. This is a board that owns the land, that runs the cemetery. And so our involvement at this point is operationally is not from a corporate point of view. We don't provide any assistance aside from the $50,000 that we provided them with a grant. If a cemetery, so the legislation states that if a cemetery board decides to abandon, so walk away from a cemetery, the legislation does state that then it becomes a municipality's responsibility. And there is many different types of ways you can deal with it. It depends whether or not a cemetery has, if it's active, if it's inactive. And in this case, to your questions about how many plots are left, that's not information that we're privy to, because again, it's an independent board that it's an independent business running that cemetery. It's the number of plots, it's how many, whether or not there's a columbarium. There's so many different things associated with cemeteries. In my career, I've had a number of cemeteries be abandoned and come to the municipality. Some municipalities will choose to bring that service on board. Sometimes you have cemeteries, which we do have in Central Elgin, that are inactive, so there's no longer burials. So we do the maintenance, we do the grass cutting, we do take care of the trees and the shrubs and all those good things. But when it's an active cemetery, it's a different kettle of fish. It's very legislative. It's not something that would happen. There's a process associated with it. So it wouldn't be something where council would be all of a sudden tomorrow, we have to run a cemetery. Notice has to be given. It's a legal process. We would have time in order to be able to prepare if that's indeed what the cemetery board wishes to do. At this point, they haven't indicated that that's, I mean, you can speak with our board member, but at this point, I don't believe that's what the cemetery board has indicated they were going to do at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Hurd. I would like clarification. Is the 30,000 in addition to the 20,000 owing, or is that's 50,000? So we've got a request for 30,000. Am I to understand that that's on top of the 20,000 that's already owed going forward?
Through you, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. This is an interesting, sorry, Councillor Graham, please. Thank you, Councillor.
Just a question to Ms. Hurd through you. Is the property fully covered? Like, is it full, I guess? Or is there an additional piece of land that's there that is it? My understanding is that it's an active cemetery. So that would, to me, mean that there's more land that's available. But I just want to clarify that's true.
Whenever we push.
My apologies, I'm not used to this technology. Again, I do know that the board does own the land, so the actual, however they are governed, again, I'm not sure on how the board itself is comprised and how they have their articles of incorporation and how that's, but they do own that land. When looking at a high-level GIS map, it does appear that there's an area for the cemetery to expand, but again, your board member on the cemetery board would probably be able to speak to that more than I.
Thank you. Counselor Bachman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question actually goes to Deputy Mayor being on the board. How many exactly active and inactive cemeteries do we have? And within that scope, you mentioned that you think we could cover the cost of, if we absorbed it, we could cover the cost for both the same. But I'd like to know the actual numbers. Like, how many do we have? What's the time? How much is expected of us? Like, right now, we're kind of speculating. I would just like some more firm numbers.
Thanks, Counselor Bachman. Deputy Mayor, please.
Through you, Mayor. So right now, there's a basic quote that the grass could probably be cut for about $19,000. And that's kind of the biggest part of the cemetery, is getting the grass cut and looking after that as far as expenses. So there's a rough quote on that right now. And then as far as managing it, if we look at some of the other cemeteries that are around, like some of the ones that the churches run, it's run part-time. So right now, I believe there's a lot of expense that's getting used up, and maybe the St. Thomas Cemetery, and our cemetery is quite like the cemetery in Central Elgin is quite active. So it makes it a little bit unfair as far as the expectations for Central Elgin to put out money.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Counselor Graham and then Counselor Griffin, please.
A couple questions there. Do we know, is the board paid? Is that a paid board, the people that sit on the board? So no one on the board is making any wage for taking care of that?
Staff are paid. There's staff that are, sorry to interrupt. Counselor Graham, I believe I could ask the Deputy Mayor, but I thought that staff were paid.
There's paid staff.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Griffin, please.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Mayor, if what we're looking at is, if I understand correctly, 19,000 per year as an estimate to cut the grass, or it is 30,000 right now, but they haven't asked since 2017. Are we not looking at a situation where we're potentially spending less per year to service it by giving them the occasional lump sum?
Thank you. I'm going to ask Ms. Hurd to comment on that, and then if the Deputy Mayor wishes to, thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor. And again, I want to caution you that this is an independent board. And so commenting on their practices as it relates to procurement and what things cost, I don't think is really appropriate for this council to be discussing. That being said, the $17,000 you do refer to, the Central Elgin did have an agreement with I believe it was that board, and I'd have to pull up the details. However, it was to operate a number of other cemeteries. I think we have 5 or 6 other cemeteries that we cut grass for, which that $17,000 was to be allocated to. We've never provided any additional funding to my knowledge, and I'll turn to the treasurer, except for that lump sum for the $50,000 loan. In terms of an operational point of view, we have provided some, I believe, a little bit of support, but nothing financially. And I don't know if Mr. Konzelman can just confirm that.
I do not believe so. Not to my knowledge.
Thank you. Counselor Graham, please.
I think I would like to see a little more information on this. So I'd like to see what happens, what the repercussions would be if they do abandon, and what the repercussions are that for the municipality, what the costs are going to be, what our options are going to be before we can make a decision on this.
Ms. Hurd, please.
Through you then, may I suggest then to council move a motion to refer it to staff for a report?
Counselor Griffin, will you make that motion?
I would be happy to amend to that, yes.
Thank you. Counselor Bachman seconding it. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Griffin, seconded by Counselor Bogman, that the correspondence received from Tom Marks, Chair, St. Thomas Cemetery Company Board of Directors, dated August 2024, be referred to staff.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Second, we have a letter from our friend Warden Ketchabaw with a request the municipality partner with the county to fund the cost of a sidewalk. For those of you that aren't quite aware, this is regarding the top of Curry Street and Joseph in Port Stanley. And there has been a stop sign put in, much to great fanfare, not all of which was positive. So we find out the items that come to play in municipal politics, and this is one that caused a lot of interest from our constituents. We did have a quick discussion with the CAO of Elgin County this morning about a potential for further conversation. Do you have any anything you'd like to add to it, or what our options are this evening, please?
Certainly. Mr. Brooks is on the line as well. But it was brought to our attention that there has been limited, if any at all, communication with the property owners that would be impacted by the sidewalk installation. And so when speaking with the CAO from the County of Elgin, as well as further conversations about the project itself, we would like a little bit more time between two of our corporations to be able to speak with each other, so we can provide a recommendation to council.
Councillor Connors.
So would you want to defer this then? So I would move that.
Thank you. Motion to defer, Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Griffin. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Connors, seconded by Counselor Griffin, that the request from the County of Elgin to partner with Central Elgin on the East Road pedestrian crossing project be deferred pending additional discussions and consultation with the county and affected homeowners.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to reports, Central Elgin Planning Office, CEP 2924 is a consent application for 207 William Street. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Watson, Councillor Griffin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Watson, seconded by Counselor Griffin, that report CEP 2924 regarding consent application E7224 be received for information, and that consent application E7224 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined.
In advance of the vote, any questions or comments from staff? Or any questions or comments from council or staff? Sorry, I jumped ahead on that a little bit. Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. CEP 3024, 211 William Street. Any questions or comments on this before I get a mover and a seconder? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bachman, thank you. And Councillor Griffin, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Bogman, seconded by Counselor Griffin, that report CEP 3024 regarding consent application E7324 be received for information, and that consent application E7324 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined.
All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Over to you, Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you. Your worship. In regards to the next report?
Sure.
Okay.
The Governance Committee. Thought you might want to speak to it.
Sure, certainly. So you'll see on the agenda, excuse me, you've got me off guard here. You see a report, no problem, in regards to the establishment of a governance committee. It's something that I would recommend because we don't have a committee structure here at the Central Elgin. It gives councillors an opportunity for those who are interested in Things such as procedural bylaws, the integrity commissioner report, just essentially council's governance, a good opportunity for a few of you to work with staff on the development of some policies that can then be brought forward to council for consideration. I'm not sure if all of you really enjoy the procedural bylaw, but as much as I do, but would recommend that putting a formal terms of reference. I know in the past, you've had budget committees and other type of quasi-standing committees here, and I would like just to see some, I would recommend that some formal terms of reference be in place just to give some guidance on the discussion. So the intention of this would for you to select 3 members of yourselves to be on that governance committee, and then between Ms. Leach and I, we'll work with the committee and develop a work plan would be of the committee. Firstly, obviously, the integrity commissioner contract is up at the end of this year. So that would be something that we would be asking the committee support on, just figuring out that process and then bringing those recommendations then up to council for the full council to vote on.
Perfect. Well, thanks for bringing this forward. Do I have any offers from the floor? Councillor Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would be very interested to participate.
Councillor Graham?
I would be interested as well.
Councillor Connors?
Yes, I'm interested.
Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd be interested because I need to learn a whole lot more. This would be a good way to learn some more.
Okay. Well, how are we going to do this? Let me just think for a moment. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 3 positions. Does anyone, seeing that there's 5 people, wish to reconsider putting their name forward? Seeing that that is not the case, shall we go to each member and vote? Or is that the best way to do it? Sure. Why don't I start on that side of the room with Councillor Connors? All those in favor of having Councillor Connors on the governance committee, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Councillor Connors is on the committee. Around Deputy Mayor. All those who wish to have the Deputy Mayor on the committee, please raise your hand. Opposed? Deputy Mayor. Shall I switch over to this side? Councillor Watson. All those who wish to have Councillor Watson on the committee, please raise your hand. Councillor Watson is not on the committee. Councillor Griffin. All those who would like to support Councillor Griffin being on the committee, please raise your hand. Councillor Griffin is not on the committee. Councillor Graham. All those voting to support Councillor Graham being on the committee, please raise your hand. Thank you. We have our 3 members. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Graham, Councillor Watson, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Watson, that a governance committee be established and the terms of reference be adopted as attached as Schedule A to the staff report, that the following 3 members of council be appointed to serve on the governance committee: Deputy Mayor Noble, Councillor Graham, Councillor Connors, and that procedural bylaw number 2602 be amended to include the definition of standing committee in section 1.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Item B, Director of Infrastructure and Community Services, Consent Agreement, Southdale Line. Questions or comments? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Watson, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report ICS 4024 regarding consent agreement 42399 Southdale Line be received as information.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. ICS 4124, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Central Elgin Water System Inspection Report. Questions or comments from council? Seeing none, if I could ask for a mover and a seconder, Councillor Bachman, Councillor Connors, thank you both.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bogman, seconded by Councillor Connors, that report ICS 4124, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Central Elgin Drinking Water System Inspection Report be received.
All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. ICS 4224 is the request for tenders for the Turvey Park walkway lighting. Any questions on this item? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder, Councillor Connors, Councillor Graham, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Graham, that the tender from AV Utility and Electrical Services for the Turvey Park walkway lighting in the amount of $99,661 plus HST be approved and funded from the contracted services budget.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Financial Services Treasurer, annual property tax installment due dates, quite straightforward. Any movers and seconders, any discussion, council? Sorry. Deputy Mayor and Council Griffin, thank you very much.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that the treasurer be authorized to change the due date of tax installments starting in 2025 to the third last business day of the month, and that the adding of penalty for any default on these due dates to the first day of the month following each due date beginning in 2025 be approved.
All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. Consolidated financial statements. Again, I think we've already done this one for the audit, so that's been done. We're now on to the Director of Fire Rescue Services. First, FS 1424, the Chief's Monthly Alarm Activities Report. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, if I could have a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bachman, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Bogman, that report FS 1424 regarding monthly alarm activities report, July 2024, be received for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Fire Prevention Officer contract. Any questions or comments for the chief? Seeing none, if I could get a mover in a sec. Oh, sorry, Councillor Graham, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I'm just wondering about, it's probably not pertinent right in this moment, but wondering about using our staff in the future. So, whether there's a certification process that needs to happen, or if there's people that are certified, people, if you can put a call out, I would rather see that brought into our volunteer fire department so that our people can, increase their skills, increase their certifications, have those additional jobs offered to them in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. To you for a response, Chief. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Sloan, to Councillor Graham. A review of our staff indicate there are 3 individuals who have a level 1 certification at this point in time. I have offered it out to the fire stations for the last year or so for those individuals that with the certification or would like to get education on it to reach out to me and attend. I have had one young lady who has expressed interest in doing it. However, each time that we have one set up, she's employed with her business. I have one individual who is semi-retired, who does come out with me at his opportunities to get some of the more practical experience. One of the hurdles that we run into is with the certification process, the majority of it is all theory. So until you get your certification and actually get out to be with somebody to get that practical education is somewhat the time-consuming component.
Follow up, Councillor Graham.
So maybe if we could just do one final call out to our people, if we're going to be taking a look at, obviously, contracting out for the rest of this year, but starting in 2025 over the course of the next 3 months, put a call out one final time to see if anyone is interested and then move forward with them.
Through you, Mayor Sloan, to Councillor Graham. I am very happy to do that. The other issue I think council is fairly aware of is that the majority of volunteer firefighters that we do have also have a full-time job, usually during the daytime hours. So it does become somewhat of a hurdle to try and get consistency with inspectors. It's one thing to have an inspector go into business A today and list these deficiencies, and to go and do a follow-up, someone else goes in and they may see something in a different light as well. So it's very important that that same inspector follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Graham.
One more question. Chief, how many hours in a year, do you know approximately how many hours in a year an inspector would be busy?
I calculated earlier, I believe I'm around 300 hours right now. Now, with that being said, I'm only able to keep up with complaint and requests. So there is no real proactive to one degree. I will say that we do try to get to the public schools because they're a fairly significant concern, as well as our arenas we try to get to because they're considered assembly occupancies where a greater number of people can gather. So otherwise, it's complaint and request driven. And the complaint component is beginning to grow with relationship to rental units. So.
And just on that note, I think that, you know, if we provide them with a little more, you know, potential candidates with a little more information, that this is going to be obviously a growing job, because once we potentially bring in Airbnb rules, we're going to need all those fire inspections. So that job is going to grow a little bit. So if we could make sure that we let them know that as well, that would be great.
And I'll just sort of close to say thanks, Ray, Chief, for taking care of this item and making sure that we're handling some of the concerns as we should be. And I know it's not as the counselor says here. I think there will be more demand going forward in 2025, and appreciate your time and having Mr. Todd take a look at this. So it's a timely decision and one that I'm pleased to support. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor, you want to
No,
motion?
Mayor Sloan, I move that we go
Great.
forward with this.
Councillor Griffin and the Deputy Mayor will second. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that the CAO be authorized to enter into a contract for the provision of fire prevention services, and that William Todd be appointed as Fire Prevention Officer for the Municipality of Central Elgin.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried again. Thanks, Chief. On to the bylaws. I'm going to need a mover and a seconder. Go ahead, Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Before we vote on these, could I ask that we just separate the procedural so that I could ask a question about it?
Sure. So it will be 1, 2, and 4 we're voting on. Is that correct, Ms. Leach? Well, why don't we do this? Bylaw 2922 to amend the procedural bylaw. Carry, or sorry, to the CAO for your comments.
I just offer a bit of advice. If you have a question in regards to a specific bylaw, you don't need to actually separate it out unless you'd like to vote on it separately. So if you just have a question, you put the motion on the floor. If you've got a question about one of the bylaws, you can go ahead and ask it without separating it out. That being said, if you'd like to have a recorded vote or a specific vote on that, then that would be an opportunity to just to try to
Thank you. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. That does make sense. So I can just ask and then separate depending. Well done, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask about the procedural bylaw amendment here. I took a look at it all and most of it looked quite good to me, but I had questions about section 414.9, which says if a member is present in person or electronically and fails to vote, the vote is recorded as no, which we've always had, unless the chair directs otherwise. And I wanted to ask what the benefit is to changing that component, because my understanding is that this is something that we do in the occasion when you can't tell the intention of the voting person.
Ms. Hurd, please.
Through you, Mayor Sloan, to Councillor Griffith, the only amendment on this procedural bylaw, and I'm looking to the deputy clerk, was to add the definition of standing committee. That was the only amendment of the procedural bylaw. So section 14, I'm just pulling it up. It was the one that had existed previously, but I can look into that a little bit later and respond back to you if you'd like.
Thank you. I may have looked at an older version of it. I did not see that when I compared.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. Sorry, Todd, Deputy Mayor.
Do you need a mover for this?
I would love one. And the Deputy Mayor has moved. And I need a seconder. I get a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Griffin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that bylaws 2919, 2921, 2922, and 2923 be taken collectively.
All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder for first, second, and final? Councillor Bachman, Deputy Mayor, thank you both.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bogman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaws 2919, 2921, 2922, and 2923 be read a first, second, third time, and finally passed.
All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Anything for other business, folks? Seeing none, if I can get a mover and a seconder to move into close, Councillor Bachman, Councillor Connors. Thank you both. Thanks, Chief.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bogman, seconded by Councillor Connors. The council proceed into closed session at 7:52 PM in order to address a matter pertaining to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
All those in favor? Opposed, and we're closed. Also, thanks to you, Mr. Councilman.